Hi YouTube friends, I am making a short video right after another one. In my previous video I said like, hey, I'm gonna pick something up and I'll just do a little short about it after this video. So here we are. In the previous video I was touching on how the Cambrian extinction never happened and why for so long we thought it did and then suddenly realized it didn't. I don't know if this is in my head because I heard it from somewhere, or if it's just a brilliant term that I just came up with, but probably the former, probably something I just heard. But the Lazarus phenomenon is what I'm going to call, either by choice or because that's the actual term. It's basically the same deal as with the coelacanth and any other animals that we believed were extinct and then suddenly found that they were not. There are different reasons for that, but basically probably 99% of the time what is happening is fossil preservation bias. Now, we barely know of anything that existed prehistorically. Almost nothing. Of every animal that ever lived. Now, the percentages and numbers I'm giving you are totally arbitrary. They're just, I'm picking them out of my head, and they could be so far off. I'm just making a point about the ridiculously small, like, numbers. Of all the animals that have ever lived, let's just say only 0.0001% of every individual species that ever lived has ever had even one individual fossilized of it. Now, of that fossilization, I mean, some of them obviously much more, but of everyone. Now, of those minuscule amounts, you break it down even smaller into all those fossils that survived fossilization and survived until today, didn't get destroyed, and so on. And then from those you break it down, so each one of these breakdowns, let's just call it 0.000001. So that is a ridiculously small amount. So then you break that number down into the ones that have actually survived. But then you have to break it down into the ones that are in a position where they are reachable by science. So many, like however many, like millions, hundreds of millions, or billions of percent of fossils that have made it this far are, let's say, 2 miles down under the mountain, like places that we never, or under an ocean. They're places that we never, ever, ever could get to. And then the fossil, of course, has to survive, and then that period, and then the fossil also has to be found. Out of all the fossils that are reachable to science, only 0.00001 will ever be at a site that is found by science, and then even at a site, only 0.00 whatever will be discovered. My point is that, relatively speaking, we know nothing. And that's what I just described as the best of circumstances, pretty much. Lots of places just are not places that things can fossilize. Like deep ocean, things can fossilize, but it's extremely hard, and that's exactly why the coelacanth disappeared for so long, is because it just lived in a habitat that is not conducive for fossilization. So they lived for hundreds of millions of years without having a single fossil for us to find. I mean, a single fossil that we found. So I'm just making a point, and that's why I mean, to such a degree that is amazing and diverse and just full of life. The Cambrian explosion in the Cambrian period was like no other time on Earth, that we were able to lose track of the entirety of the period, the entirety of every animal, I mean, I can't even describe how impossible that sounds, that we could suddenly no longer find a single thing from them. And that's just because there weren't any sites that we found that had them. And finally, one person found a site with a small, relatively small, compared to the other Cambrian sites, relatively very small area of fossils and number of fossils and so on. So I just really, I cannot express how rare and how, like, the numbers of this, it's just ridiculous. Like, we just discovered that an entire extinction event didn't happen, and that some of these super animals, the animals that lived there, lived hundreds of or dozens of millions of years longer and evolved further and so on. We just found that out in the 90s. I mean, exactly the same idea as the coelacanth. I mean, it's no different than that. We thought it went extinct, and 100 years later we found one, or like we found a living one. And think about that. We didn't even find a fossil for them. We just found, I mean, they were still alive, and it took us that long to find them. That just shows you these like what we're dealing with, the numbers and the impossibilities and so on. So I just wanted to make a video. I mean, I didn't want, it's a major point that needs to be brought up, and that's 7 minutes. I didn't want to add into my previous video, like, on a tangent. So this was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, but it's a major enough point that it needs to be pointed out and it needs to be understood. So I hope you guys, I mean, I'm sure plenty of you understood this already. Maybe some of you hadn't thought of it or knew about it, but just it hadn't really struck home. So I hope that I have helped some of you out into understanding this or realizing it in general. So thank you for watching. If you did watch, if you didn't need to, then no problem. I hope to see you in my next video.